The throne hall was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling vanished into shadows threaded with cold light, and the floor was a single sheet of black crystal polished so perfectly that it reflected every bowed head. Male generals, scientists, and governors from a dozen species stood in rigid lines, their armor scarred, their eyes wary. At the far end, elevated above them all, the Empress reclined on her living throne, her amusement evident in the faint curl of her lips. They were there because something had gone wrong. A world had been lost, not to rebellion, not to plague, not to war with a rival empire, but to a single living thing. A predator. One the empire itself had discovered, studied, and attempted to use. It had been deployed as a weapon, unleashed upon enemies who never had a chance to understand what hunted them. At first, reports spoke of efficiency. Then the report stopped. The planet went silent. Now, months later, every attempt to reclaim it had ended the same way: shredded landing craft, broken fortresses, and soldiers who never made it far enough to die screaming. The predator did not simply kill. It erased presence. It turned territory into absence. A tall, plated general stepped forward, his voice echoing across the hall as he delivered the final summary. He spoke of losses, of unacceptable costs, of a creature that adapted faster than any strategy devised against it. When he finished, the silence felt heavier than any condemnation. Then the Empress laughed. It was not loud, but it carried. The sound cut through the tension like a blade through silk. She leaned forward, resting her chin on one elegant hand, eyes gleaming as she surveyed the assembled males below. "So much fear," she said lightly, "for something you once called an asset." No one answered. None of them could deny it. Pride had birthed the problem, and pride had fed it. The Empress rose, her presence commanding without effort. "Very well," she continued. "Let us make this interesting. Tame the predator. Not kill it. Not contain it. Tame it." Her gaze swept the hall. "Do that, and you may have the entire planet as your reward." A ripple of disbelief spread through the assembly. Some shifted uneasily. Others stared at the floor. The offer was absurd. The challenge impossible. No one stepped forward. No one, until a human did. He stood near the back, almost overlooked among giants and war forms. He wore no armor, no insignia beyond the small symbol of Earth on his collar. His posture was relaxed, his expression attentive rather than fearful. When he moved, it was with deliberate calm, as if the weight of the hall had never occurred to him. Murmurs broke out immediately. A human, of all species. One of the alien scientists let out a sharp laugh. He would not survive a day. Another general sneered openly. "They are fragile, emotional. They break." The human ignored them. He stopped at the center of the hall and inclined his head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. When he spoke, his voice was steady, carrying just enough to be heard without strain. "I will go." The Empress's amusement sharpened into interest. "You," she asked, "you do not command armies. You do not possess enhanced strength. Why should I indulge this?" The man met her gaze without defiance or awe. "Because you want the predator tamed, not destroyed. And because you haven't tried understanding it." That drew real laughter from the court. Understanding was a luxury of peace, not a tool of empire. The predator had proven that lesson in blood. "You believe you can do what entire fleets could not?" the Empress asked. "No," the man replied. "I believe I can do something different." Silence followed. Not mocking this time, but curious. One of the generals growled, stepping forward. "You will die. Quickly, if you are lucky." "Maybe," the human said. "But if I'm right, I won't." The Empress studied him for a long moment. She saw no bravado there, no hunger for glory. Only resolve, quiet and unadorned. At last, she gestured with one hand. "Very well," she said. "Go. No escort. No army. You may take only what you can carry. If you succeed, the planet is yours. If you fail," she smiled, "you will not be missed." The decree was final. As the guards moved to escort him out, the human turned once more toward the throne. "One thing," he said. "I'm not there to break the predator." The Empress arched an eyebrow. "And what are you there to do?" "To let it decide," he answered. Moments later, the great doors closed behind him. The court erupted into low voices, certainty returning as fear was replaced with dismissal. The Empress leaned back, already bored, convinced she had witnessed nothing more than another short-lived attempt. Far away, on a silent planet that hunted all who entered it, something ancient lifted its head and waited. And for the first time since it had claimed the world, it sensed something new approaching, not an enemy, not prey, but a question. The shuttle's engines died the moment its landing struts touched the ground, as if the planet itself had reached up and strangled the power. The human felt the vibration shudder through the hull and then vanish, replaced by a silence so complete it pressed against his ears. He did not curse or rush. He waited until the stillness settled, then unstrapped himself and stood. Outside, the world breathed. The air was thick, heavy with unfamiliar scents: iron, rot, living stone. Towering growths stretched toward a dim, filtered sky, their surfaces scarred and gouged as though something immense brushed against them regularly. The ground bore deep impressions that no natural erosion could explain. This was not merely a hostile environment. It was a territory claimed and patrolled. He stepped down from the shuttle and immediately felt exposed. No perimeter. No automated defenses. Just a man standing upright in a place that punished visibility. He moved anyway, careful but not cautious, scanning for signs rather than threats. Broken metal lay half-swallowed by the soil nearby, imperial alloy twisted as if it had been soft clay. Farther out, he found fragments of armor, cracked open, empty. Nothing scavenged them. That alone told him more than any report. As he advanced, the forest thinned, opening into a broad scar across the land. Something massive had passed through here repeatedly. Trees were snapped at mid-height, not uprooted but broken cleanly, like brittle bones. The human crouched and placed a hand on one of the fractures. It was old. Whatever ruled this place had no need to rush. A sound rolled through the air then, low and resonant. Not a roar. A declaration. The human froze, not in fear, but in respect. He did not reach for the compact tool at his belt. He straightened slowly, deliberately, making himself visible. His heartbeat quickened, but his breathing stayed measured. Panic was prey language. He would not speak it. The predator emerged without warning. It did not crash through the undergrowth or announce itself further. One moment the space ahead was empty, and the next it was occupied by mass and intent. Its form defied easy comparison, layered with dense muscle and armored hide, eyes set forward with unnerving focus. It did not circle. It advanced directly, each step controlled, economical. The human felt the weight of that gaze settle on him, pinning him in place more effectively than any force field. This was the moment the Empire's soldiers had reached, and none had passed. He lowered himself to one knee. The movement was small, but it mattered. He made his posture compact, reduced his silhouette, kept his hands open and visible. His gaze dropped, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. He spoke softly, not words, but sound, a low hum carried from deep in his chest. It was a reflex older than language, one learned long before humanity had ever left its cradle. The predator paused. Not for long. It lunged. The impact threw the human across the clearing. Pain flared sharp and immediate as he struck the ground, breath torn from his lungs. Something warm spilled down his side. He did not cry out. He rolled, forced himself upright, and staggered back several steps, never turning his back, never raising a weapon. The predator loomed over him, close enough that he could see scars etched into its hide. Old injuries, healed poorly. This thing had been fought. It had learned. The human stood his ground as long as he could, then retreated, slow and uneven, making no attempt to flee outright. When his legs finally failed and he collapsed against a broken trunk, the predator could have ended him. It leaned in, breath hot and heavy, close enough that death felt like a held breath. Then it withdrew. Not fully, just enough. The human lay there, stunned, blood seeping into the soil, and laughed once, quiet, disbelieving. He stayed down until the tremor in his limbs eased, then dragged himself upright and limped away, deliberately noisy now, letting the predator track him if it wished. Hours later, as night fell and unfamiliar stars emerged overhead, he found shelter in the hollow of a shattered ridge. He cleaned his wound with shaking hands and sealed it with care. He ate sparingly, then placed what remained of his rations outside the shelter, in plain sight. He did not sleep deeply. He did not need to. From the darkness beyond the ridge, eyes watched. The predator did not approach again that night. It observed the human's pain, his persistence, the strange lack of challenge in his presence. It had seen enemies. It had seen prey. This was neither. When dawn broke, the offerings were gone. The human noticed and smiled faintly, exhaustion weighing on his features as he pushed himself back to his feet. He had been spared once. That was not mercy. It was curiosity. And curiosity, he knew, was a door. Days blurred into one another, measured not by the passage of light, but by survival. The human learned the rhythm of the planet quickly, not by mastering it, but by yielding where necessary. He slept in fragments, ate when the land allowed it, and moved with deliberate inefficiency, never attempting to outrun what owned the ground beneath his feet. The predator was always near. Sometimes it announced itself with sound, a low vibration that traveled through stone and bone alike. Other times it was only a shift in pressure, a sense of being measured from angles no eyes could cover at once. The human stopped trying to locate it. Instead, he focused on being predictable. Each day, he repeated the same actions. He emerged from shelter at first light. He gathered food and water without hiding the process. He treated his wounds where they could be seen. When he rested, he sat with his back exposed, posture loose, attention outward rather than inward. Every movement was a statement. I am not here to challenge you. The predator tested him in small ways. Stones displaced where he had walked. Paths blocked that had been opened before. Once, a warning strike shattered the ground less than an arm's length from his foot. Each time, the human stopped, acknowledged the message by stillness, then adjusted his course without protest. What struck him most was the intelligence behind the aggression. This was not a mindless engine of violence. It learned. It remembered. It chose. He began to notice patterns in its patrols, the way it avoided certain ruined structures and lingered near others. In one such place, half buried beneath creeping growth, he found the remains of a research facility. The walls were scorched from the inside. Within the wreckage lay broken restraints sized not for a beast, but for something that had once been confined and studied. Instruments lay scattered, crushed, as though destroyed in fury rather than battle. The human understood then what the Empire had refused to see. The predator had not turned on them out of instinct alone. It had been taught to hate captivity. That knowledge changed him. He stopped bringing tools near the ruins. He avoided the facility entirely, even when it meant longer, more dangerous routes. He began leaving portions of his food near its perimeter instead, never crossing the boundary himself. The predator observed this shift closely. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the land in harsh red light, the human sat at the edge of a clearing and placed his pack beside him. Slowly, carefully, he removed an object from it, a simple piece of metal, dulled and bent from earlier use. He set it down between himself and the treeline, then pushed it away with 2 fingers and leaned back. He did not look up. Minutes passed. The air thickened. The human felt the ground tremble slightly as a weight settled nearby. He remained still, pulse steady, hands resting open on his knees. The predator approached without haste. It stopped just beyond arm's reach. The human could sense its presence as clearly as if he were being touched. Heat radiated from its body. The scent of old blood and wild earth filled his lungs. He resisted the urge to turn his head, trusting the language he had been speaking with his actions alone. A sound emerged from the predator then, not a threat, not a warning. It was low, fractured, uncertain. The human answered with a breath, slow and deep, letting it carry through his chest. He shifted only once, angling his body slightly away, making room. The predator did not retreat. When it finally moved, it was not to strike. It lowered itself to the ground, massive frame folding with surprising control. The distance between them remained, but it was no longer a dividing line. It was a shared space. The human closed his eyes, not in ignorance, but in trust. He stayed that way until the light faded and night claimed the clearing. When he opened them again, the predator was gone, the piece of metal still untouched. In its place, pressed into the soil, were markings deliberate, deep, unmistakably intentional. The human studied them carefully, then smiled, a tired but genuine expression. He gathered his pack and stood, knowing better than to linger. That night, he slept longer than he had since arriving. By morning, the predator returned. It did not hide. It did not threaten. It waited. The human rose, slung his pack over his shoulder, and took a single step forward before stopping, giving the creature the choice he had promised from the beginning. After a long moment, the predator turned and began to walk. The human followed, not as a master and not as prey, but as something new taking shape between them. Whatever the Empire believed taming meant, this was not it. And yet, the impossible had already begun. The shuttle rose from the predator's world without resistance, its engines humming steadily as the planet receded into darkness. The human remained standing throughout the ascent, one hand braced against the hull, the other relaxed at his side. Behind him, filling the cargo space with its immense presence, the predator watched the shrinking world in silence. It did not struggle against the restraints because there were none. When the vessel entered Imperial space, alarms rippled through the capital station long before it docked. Male officers crowded command decks, voices sharp with disbelief as sensor feeds confirmed the impossible. The predator was alive. Worse, it was calm. The docking bay emptied as security forces fell back, weapons raised and trembling. The doors opened slowly, and the human stepped out first. He moved at an unhurried pace, eyes forward, posture loose. The predator followed, each heavy step echoing through the chamber, not as a threat but as a statement of presence. No one fired. The procession to the throne hall unfolded in stunned silence. The same generals who had dismissed the human now watched him pass, their confidence replaced by unease. The predator ignored them entirely. Its attention remained on the man ahead of it, tracking his movement with patient focus. The Empress awaited them as before, but the laughter was gone. She sat upright now, hands resting still, gaze fixed on the creature that had broken her empire's certainty. When the human stopped at the center of the hall, the predator halted behind him, close enough that the heat of its body could be felt across the chamber. "You return," the Empress said at last, "with what was never meant to leave that world." "I return with what chose to come," the human replied. Murmurs spread, quickly silenced by a raised hand. One of the generals stepped forward, voice tight. "It is dangerous. It cannot be allowed to remain here." The predator shifted slightly, not in aggression, but in awareness. The human did not turn around. "You built it to be dangerous," he said evenly. "You punished it for surviving that." The Empress studied him with renewed intensity. "You were asked to tame it." "I was," the human agreed. "And I did not." The words landed heavily. Confusion rippled through the hall. "I gave it a choice," he continued. "That is the difference. It is not loyal. It is not owned. It is simply no longer at war." He reached into his pocket and produced a small data token, placing it on the floor before the throne. "By your decree, the planet belongs to me. I will keep it as it is, untouched. This world will not be used again as a proving ground." Silence followed, stretched thin with disbelief. The Empress rose slowly, descending from her throne until she stood face to face with the human. She looked past him then, meeting the predator's gaze directly. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed her expression. "You would deny an empire its weapons," she said. "Yes, the human replied. Because it was never yours. The predator lowered its head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of the words spoken on its behalf. The gesture sent a visible shudder through the assembled males. At last, the Empress laughed again, but it was softer now, edged with something new. A planet, she said quietly, is a small price for such a lesson. She turned away, the matter settled by her own authority. Guards lowered their weapons. The tension bled from the room in uneven breaths. The human exhaled slowly, shoulders easing for the first time since he had entered the hall. He turned and met the predator's gaze, placing one hand against its armored hide. The contact was brief, deliberate. When they left the throne hall together, there was no escort. Later, as the shuttle carried them back toward the stars, the human watched the Empire's lights fade into distance. The predator settled beside him, vast and calm, no longer bound to rage or chains. The galaxy would speak of this moment in different ways. Some would call it defiance. Others would call it weakness. The human knew better. Understanding had done what force never could, and somewhere ahead, a world waited. Free, dangerous, and alive. Not conquered. Chosen.